Hey guys, what's going on? Chiming in here for the Game of Thrones type talk. I didn't actually do an outline or anything like that to kind of prepare myself, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it as I often do. Uh, yeah, that was something. Um, I liked Tamir's approach to it. Part of me had to chuckle because I was like, "Oh man, is that like an acceptance phase or something like that?" And the other is like, I think he's just trying to look at it objectively," which I think is fair. Um, I looked at it a little differently, and I think my thoughts can be kind of summed up by a scene, two scenes in the show, the in the season finale, and I think they kind of come from a perspective of like remember how we talked about the Last Jedi and Star Wars, and I think I had mentioned something where you tend to find more faults with something you don't like or something that you feel like is being poorly executed. Um, it's just easier to find them. It's easier to look for them. It's easier to want to basically justify your own reasons for not liking something. And I think there's a fine line. I think like objectively looking from the outside, there's a fine line between a story not going the way you want it and a story being poorly executed. I think for some people it's like, oh, I don't like what they did to my character. That's that's not really fair in the sense that you want I don't want to say this like it's not really fair because characters can change. Like I think when I mentioned like I'd be okay with Danny going mad. I'd be okay with Jamie having kind of this failed arc where he seeks to be someone better than he was. Or and I even argued that it wasn't because he was always that kind of good person, uh, kind of beneath the surface. You saw his kindness with Tyrion. You saw it with Brienne. Like you saw him. You see him being like a very traditional knight in some senses, where like a kind of a protector of the realms of men. But not. I'm not gonna get that too much. But like what I was getting at is there's a fine line between being upset because things aren't going your way and being upset because things were executed poorly and it also didn't happen to go your way. Whereas you would see things playing out or like breadcrumbs were kind of led out there to suggest something was happening or that something wasn't happening and then it happens anyway. Like that kind of stuff. I think like there's a dichotomy between the way people see things. Like you are gonna have those people who's like, oh, I'm just upset because it didn't go my way. Like I wanted my happy ending with Dany on the throne and John by her side. It's like, yeah, that's fair to feel that way, but I don't think like that does anyone any favors because it doesn't necessarily have to play out that way. On the other hand, like you have people like that are saying uh, the arc didn't make sense. Like there was things at play that kind of made it hard to swallow. That seemed to be more about poor execution and writing. We could accept it if it was played out better. That kind of thing. I think that's a fair criticism for things. I think if you're going to go that route, like it's fair. And I think on both sides, you're going to have people like pointing fingers saying, "Oh, you're in this one group when you're actually in the other," and it's like vice versa. But that all being said, like that's something I try to keep in mind with criticisms. But man, I was not much of a fan because unlike Timir, I didn't accept the. I like I said, I felt like I was making a lot of allowances for things that were happening, like the battle with the Night King and the Dothraki forces being wiped out, and apparently like them no like there's a healthy number of Dothraki out there, and they're actually out there in the New World as you see at the end of the episode, living the city life, which is just like that was an eye roll moment for me because I was like that's not what the Dothraki are about. Uh, you saw yeah it's just like that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to their culture, what they are. Like they're raiders by trade. They don't have a reason to settle down at this point. Like they're warriors for life kind of thing, and it's what they do. It's that's like they live and die and do that for generations. Like I don't feel like the idea of Westeros changes that dramatically. And it was just there was a it was an isolated shot with I think when John was approaching the boat and Grey Worm was giving him the stink eye. You saw some Dothraki kind of around on the streets, and it's like, yeah, I guess a couple, but like I kind of extrapolated from there was like, oh no, like the Dothraki settled in King's Landing, and I think Time Beer has really well addressed all the points of how that just doesn't work in the, like how those two worlds don't kind of mesh together. So that was like one of the things, uh, where it's just like you have this history, and you just, well, I just kind of pieced it all together, so it works out in the end. But like you ignored every step that was taken along the way. Another one was, and it's like, this is something where I said that they've been doing this for some time now, like with the Battle of the Night King, where I think this is one of the original points I was making, was the battle with one of the Night King and the Dothraki being wiped out, but them not actually being wiped out. The same with like Jaime and Cersei and the thing, the stone collapsing on them. It's like, how much of it was done for cinematics versus practicality. So if you look at the scene where Tyrion gets into the crypts, they could have stepped 5 feet to the left and there was zero rubble. They could have jumped and dove out of the way. Like, it wasn't a total collapse like the scene had originally led you to believe. In fact, they weren't under that much rubble. They were under a single layer of bricks. If you were to do something like get yourself in the fetal position or anything like that, like, you would have survived what they were kind of hit with. Now, were they not buried deep because it was a show and they didn't want to, they wanted to show the bodies and have Tyrion be able to access them in a timely manner? Possibly. But you also have the scene where you shoot him where he's not crawling over level to get to him. He's like walking across a flat surface to dig through at most one layer of bricks. And it's just like, it's one of those, it's a shortcut, but it's also, did you just kill them because you wanted that death scene and then just didn't set up anything around it? It was just like, it's a small thing to be irritated with, but I think it kind of paints a picture of what they were going for. They wanted to hit the story notes rather than tell the story. Um, a great example of telling the story, the moment I think that made, well, there was two moments that made me audibly groan, like where I was just like, ugh, and like it's funny, like I'm sitting there watching it and I'm like, but why, like that whole like thing, like, but why, like, no, there's clearly better options here, like this, what, wait, what, like, and I'll try to get into here, like I'll probably forget and come back around. So Grey Worm, we know, certified badass. He survived. Hey, good on him for that. He's got Tyrion there as the prisoner, and he's like, "Yeah, you don't get to talk." And then Tyrion proceeds to monologue for 5 minutes. It's like, okay, well, I guess him talking is okay. Where basically Tyrion shapes the future of all of Westeros, despite being a prisoner, despite essentially having a hand in murdering Grey Worm's queen. It's just like, it was like, why strip the agency from that character? Like, in that moment, like, was Tyrion making that good a point to a very much enraged Grey Worm? I highly doubt it. But I feel like the director's like, I feel like there would be like this interaction between the character and the actor and the, like, so what's my motivation? Or the director's like, what's my motivation here? It's like, well, the two loves of your lives are dead. Like, you loved Missandei in a romantic way. I think you loved Dany in a more like platonic way, where it's like she was the person who freed you. She was the person who gave you purpose. Like, she was this massive force in your life. These two people were killed, and you couldn't really seek justice for the first one. You got it in basically sheer amounts of blood from the people that were associated with her, but like, you didn't get direct justice. But here you have Jon and Tyrion, who basically orchestrated or pushed for the, basically orchestrated and executed the death of your second love. And you're just gonna sit idly by while he goes and helps like set his own policy as a prisoner. Like, that's just, I was just like, yeah, okay, right on, whatever. I just kind of audibly groaned, like, okay, like, you're just gonna strip Grey Worm of that. The other thing in this moment is, I audibly groan whenever he's like, who has a good story, and I looked around the table and I'm like, Sir Davos Seaworth has an amazing story. Uh, both Arya and Sansa have very impressive stories that we've told. Do you know who doesn't have an amazing story? You know who got left out of an entire season because I'm pretty sure they forgot about him at some point? You know who has sat there in a chair and done nothing for the past who knows how many seasons? You know who warged out in the Battle of Winterfell and did for the with the Night's King and did nothing? Yeah, it was Bran the Broken. So when they're like, he's like, Bran the Broken should be king, I was like, wait, you're telling me the Lords of Westeros are buying into this? I groaned. I groaned so audibly. Not just because, okay, pretend for a second that they did. And oh man, like the story of Bran the Broken is just the most amazing story as opposed to all the other amazing stories around the table. Like Tyrion straight up has a better story than him. And it's like obviously he probably wouldn't nominate himself, but like realistically speaking, it's a much better story. You come from a powerful house, like you were kind of like that bastard broken thing kind of thing going on. Like, it's just like what all he's been through, like that he's served, and like I'm not saying he would have made a good ruler or anything like that, but like his premise on selling it is a story that can't be broken. It's like, yeah, uh, sure, like I guess you could tell that story, but like Jon has the much better story. Like, yeah, jeez, it's just like I groaned, I audibly groaned. I was like, and then for it to have everyone go along with it, to have him like, yeah, like no, back up. Yeah, the whole three-eyed raven thing and everything like that, like I don't buy it at all. Like it's just I could say so much about it, but I'm going to try to keep this shorter because I'm sure it's already going to be long. You can kind of extrapolate your own ideas from it. Um, the whole thing with the three-eyed raven, like, oh, why do you think I came here in the first place? Like for me to be king, like what happened to? No, I want nothing. I want nothing for the life of the Stark, the power, the political influence, anything like that. Like, oh no, like now I'm gonna do it. I got you guys. I'm gonna be the king, and I'm gonna rule with my vacant stare. Uh, I had to laugh whenever I feel like the show writers forgot that he was the three-eyed raven because he was like, I don't see a master of whispers and some one or two other titles at the table. It's like, you're the freaking three-eyed raven. What do you need the master of whispers for? Like, that seems like a pretty redundant thing at this point. And when Tyrion basically said we'll fill the position, and Tyrion had said that when Tyrion's selling point was you're the three-eyed raven. You know all of our present and all of our past. Like all things that were going on. And it's just like okay guys, like you didn't even try on this one. Like I'm sorry, you didn't. And I'm kind of jumping around here. It's like with things they didn't even try is they have that whole arc of Arya becoming an assassin. You know what she didn't use for the rest of the story after she killed Walder Frey? The whole thing of becoming a master assassin. When it would have been really freaking useful outside of getting launched in a giant slingshot at the freaking Night King. So yeah, it just to me it nosedived, and it I don't know if like I maybe have to go back and watch some of the earlier seasons again, but I feel like maybe it was rose tinted glasses. I don't know, but man, that was just I groaned. I groaned audibly at them naming Bran the king and him being like, oh, why do you think I came here? And it's like you were just on that three-eyed raven talk, not long at all ago, where it's like, oh no, I'm above and beyond all that. Like I don't think about this or anything. It's like. And then he's like, well, let me go find the dragon. And instead of him even warging out, they just kind of wheel him away. I'm like, okay, I guess. Like, there was that. You could have done that callback to Shot where it's like, and someday you will fly. And it's like, I know he flew with the Raven and stuff like that, sure. But it's like, to have him warg into Drogon and kind of fly around a bit would have been a scene, I guess. But yeah, so I groaned whenever they sold that idea, they pitched it, and the worst idea I think, it makes Tyrion come off as really dumb is from now on this is how we'll elect a king. I thought it was funny that they that Sam basically pitched the idea of democracy and everyone laughed it off like ha ha ha. It was a slapstick moment. But like Sam's always kind of like been that forward-thinking optimist. Or I don't want to say that. I don't want to paint him in that way, but like I feel like that's something Sam might say. Um, but yeah, let's let's think here for a second. Um, Tyrion's idea is, hey, we'll come here and elect a new king every time there's a successor needed. Shout out to Sansa for like casually mentioning that her brother's junk doesn't work. Like, oh, but Bran can't have children. Like, man, you gotta say that in front of everyone, little big sister, because that's kind of messed up. I don't know how they exactly determined that, but right on. Uh, Maybe I guess one of the Meisters who was healing them figured it out or something. I don't know. But like it just still seems like, well, like, but he can't have children. It's like, oh, chill out there, Sansa. Like that's putting some information out there I might not want out there. That was on the same line of Bran the Broken. It's like, don't call me that. It's like just Bran Stark will do. Like, no, all hail Bran the Broken. Like, listen, I swear you call me that one more time, there's gonna be a problem. Like it just seemed disrespectful. Uh, like Bran Stark will be fine. Uh, we don't need Bran the Broken. Um, yeah, what was I gonna say? So, dang it, lost where I was. So there was a thing with Bran that was really. Oh, that was what I was getting at is Tyrion's plan for future government. There is literally nothing from having a war break out from every king's succession now from here on out, because you've basically made it a not a democracy where everybody gets a vote, but a very select few people get the vote, and they what is gonna they kind of bought into like okay, assuming for a second that they buy into the idea of Bran the Broken being this clear amazing choice. How often is someone going to show up where they're not going to have someone from their own house that they want to rule the kingdom? Like they're just getting out of a long and bloody war, most of these people. So at this point, they're probably more looking for a reprieve more than to seize power. Like most of their houses are in shambles. There's just like it's all kinds of unpleasantness going on. So I could see them being like, okay, fine, we'll settle for this guy. But like, what makes Tyrion the political person that he is think that this system has any kind of lasting potency to it without like causing massive outbreaks in war and death and all this other stuff whenever someone else shows up and says, listen, I vote for this person. Well, no, screw that. I vote for this person. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense. Like it's poorly thought out, poorly executed. Especially given what we know, like nothing about these people seems like it has changed enough for them to be unified. Like if the war against the dead had been worse, maybe, but that war's over. It's done. You have no perceived threats on the horizon. So what's to stop you a generation down the line being like, no, screw you, I want to be king. Well, I don't think you should be king. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to go succeed and run our own kingdom. Well, if you do that, we're going to go to war over it. It's just like, it was so bad. It's like, if you look at it from a strategic thing, oh, let's also shout out to like Yara Greyjoy, who's probably as independent, if not more so than Sansa. Sansa's like, oh yeah, like the North chooses to remain independent. I picture like them panning over to Yara, being like, wait, that was an option. I'll take that option too. The Iron Islands are going to be independent, and then you're just like, well, no, actually, we're not going to let that happen because you don't want the Iron Islands to be independent. Like you don't want them out there raiding you every Tuesday or something like that. Like you want them to kind of be bending the knee. But then it's like, well, she got it. Why can't I? So it's just one of those ones where it's like you apply a little pressure to it, like man, that bubble pops quick. Like it's poor. It just does not work, and I don't think it's befitting of the political genius that Tyrion would have been building up over these past couple years. That was another complaint I had, that they basically gutted, I think, the three political geniuses of the show in Tyrion, Littlefinger, and Varys. Like, I feel like the Game of Thrones was played by them more consciously than anyone else. And, like, there was a little point with, like, Littlefinger. It was like a George R. R. Martin thing. And it's like, Littlefinger was supposed to be this nice person, that he was supposed to help people. But he was always serving his own needs. It's like he wasn't so good with information that he was dangerous that you had to need him around. Like he was genuinely like he would help people, but he would help them in a way that would allow himself to gain status. Whereas in the show, it's like every time you felt like he was basically some evil dude twirling his mustache. It's like people people aren't going to call upon that kind of person to help them if you're consistently like that evil malevolent force. It's just like there was like they did a couple things like they did with Varys, they did with Tyrion, like Tyrion going from this person who was like probably one of the most intelligent people in the land to like suggesting a form of government that's going to basically result in an all-out war every time an election takes place. So yeah, it's just like they really gutted the people who played the Game of Thrones. Oh, that was the other the audible groan moment was the Game of Thrones was in our hearts all along. Whatever they said, yeah, it's a song of ice and fire, and man, I had a couple problems with that because it was just like it was one of those moments where it's just like, oh, you're really gonna throw like the titles of the books in there. It's like there's been a couple movies like that where it's like I forget the references to it, but it's like there's a couple movies out there where they throw the title. I think it was like the show where they're like, man, I really love when they throw the title of the movie into the actual dialogue, and it's like it might have been a Family Guy thing. And it's just like, it turns out the Game of Thrones was in our hearts all along. It's like, no, you can't do that. It's like the cheesiest thing ever. But beyond that, it was a poorly told story if Tyrion wasn't in it. He's hand of the king for how many kings? Or kings and queens? He's like a powerful political advisor who helped shape policy and decisions. Leaving him out of it is akin to the caller ID joke in the beginning of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, where you're doing like a slapstick comedy thing. It's like that's not a moment for it. I'm sorry. Like you don't introduce like that kind of joke into something that has been established as something very different when it comes to like humorous tones. Like I'm not saying like Star Wars is devoid of humor or anything like that, but good freaking lord. When they're like, yeah, I don't think you're in it. Like, a part of me was like, maybe they're messing with him or something like that. The other part is like, no, they weren't messing with him. It's just a really poorly executed story. And the Meisters and the Citadel and everything like that, like, they're supposed to tell accurate representation of the story. It's like, imagine telling, like, a political story and leaving out, like, one of the key figures, and it's like, that just completely shapes the motivations and actions of all the major players that person influenced. And I feel like it's like, oh, and like Sam said he helped him and stuff like that, or something. It's like, Sam, like you kind of know what was going on here to a certain extent, and at the very least, you can go talk to your all-knowing king and be like, hey, listen, while you're standing there, or while you're sitting there doing nothing like that you usually tend to do, why don't you read over this book and help me like point out a couple factual inaccuracies, because we apparently left out Tyrion's character along the way. It was just one of those worthy moments where I'm like, good freaking lord. Wow, yeah. And this is mostly on the second half of the show. Like the first half of the show, I was like, man, you guys need to wrap this stuff up, because like there was stuff I liked, like the stuff with the talk between Jon and Tyrion, but I also feel like Jon was being a little bit of a broken record at that point. Like, dude, you just saw her burn the entire city. Like, I get, and it's like he says, I still love her. And it's like, yeah, do you love her though? Because like you really seem like you've been kind of put off by the whole aunt thing here recently. So it's like, do you just respect her? Like, I don't know. Like, and then it's like, I can't do it. I won't do it to her. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's clearly the right thing to do. Jon's always done the right thing. Blah blah blah. Yeah. But like him knifing Dany, I was like, man, that was super cliche. Like, you'll always be my queen. And they do the stab scene. You can't see who got stabbed, but there was only one clear person who would have gotten stabbed. And they fade back, and he cradles her and all that kind of stuff. And Drogon melts the Iron Throne to symbolically symbolize that the symbology was, it wasn't that Jon killed Dany, it was that the Iron Throne killed Dany, and I audibly groaned. Maybe I'm just a cynic at this point, but good lord. It was rare. I said there was like 2 or 3 moments where it was like the Game of Thrones when it was in our hearts all along. And I was like, the show was so much better than this. It was so much better. And it's just like, I don't know if it gained mass appeal, and they're like, audiences won't be able to keep up with this. we gotta dumb this down. Let's give him a 45-minute episode of the dragon exploding things with dragon breath. Did they forget? Did they completely forget about the white horse that Arya rode off on, only for her to randomly show back up the scene? Like, oh, hey guys, actually, like, my story's not over or anything like that. I had this like epic scene where I rode off, and no, like, I had to come back and tell you guys I'm going and riding off to like lands unknown. It was like what happened to the white horse? Why did you come back riding that or anything like that? You just kind of rarely show up beside people. Oh, you're this master assassin who can change faces and stuff like that, and we've got this tyrant that no one can get close to. Uh, John, you handle her. She trusts you. She doesn't have a Kingsguard. She doesn't have Unsullied watching her nonstop in this hostile land. I think this. I read somewhere that she had a Queensguard in the books. But like, yeah, her just kind of up there on the throne. Like, yeah, what Tamir said, it was very sad that Dany never even got to sit in the Iron Throne. But like, you also, like, it's just one of those ones. Like, you could leave it up to the madness. Like, Dany's speech is like, from Winterfell to Dorne. I feel like John's ears perked up. I'm like, wait a minute, bitch. Hold on a second here. I thought we just conquered the thing, and we gave my troops to you, and I bent the knee. Why are you talking about going up to Winterfell to start some stuff up with your army and break the chains and everything like that? Like, I understand you went a little mad there, but it seemed like you calmed back down until you started making that Nazi rally speech where you're talking about freeing the whole world. We were on your side, and you're talking about going to Winterfell. And maybe she was just saying like that was already done. Boy, it didn't read that way. It did. Maybe she misread the crowd a little bit when she's like psyching up her army. Like, listen, we're gonna go out here and murder all these fools. I thought one of the really good points that was made in the episode, like I'm trying to throw in some good stuff here and there, was Tyrion basically broke down what Dany was, as she was someone of blood and fire, and up until this point, she had killed people. She'd killed the slavers, she'd killed the masters, she'd killed the nobles, but they were bad men. And it like he basically put it out like it was a, I don't want to say it. They were bad men, so the decision like we basically cheered her on for it. When the reality was it just, maybe it was more of a happy circumstance that she killed the right people that time, but she was still just a killer. Which I don't buy, because I think there was genuine compassion behind a lot of what she did. And like, even with the Tarleys and stuff like that, like, yeah, she didn't have to burn them, but she gave them every chance she could to not burn, like, to not, like, it wasn't like she was like, okay, they're traitors, we've got to burn them, like, and I don't know, maybe it was Tyrion and Varys's, like, suggestion not to just, like, outright kill him. She's like, okay, I'll give him a chance. But I don't know, like, it still just felt like, man, she went off the deep rails hard, and, like, how'd you think that was going to go? Like, you think John's that loyal to you? He just betrayed you with your greatest secret to his family, and you're up there talking about going up to Winterfell with your army again. It's like, we were just there. Man. There's, and I know I'm missing so much stuff. Like, the shot with Dany and like the dragon wings coming out was awesome. Like I said, like the shot with the mountain and the hound, that was awesome. Like, they did, like, it's one of those ones, like, I can't fault the actors, the cinematographers, the costume people, like the VFX artists. Like, they did work, but man, they did not pull it out with the story. Like, I would be looking at the writers and being like, no, or not even like all the writers, but just like maybe the lead overarching writers that kind of pushed the overall direction of the show, and then everyone else had to try to shoehorn in the story to get what they wanted out of it. But man, let me give a quick thought here if there's anything else that was big. I know I've been pretty hard on it, and it's just because the show caused me to audibly groan several times during the episode. Something that I usually don't do when it comes to TV. Like, I can like something or not like something and not be like, oh, that's a shame. But like, to be like, oh, come on. It's like, usually takes a little bit more investment on my part to get me to do it. But it also, like, it's just, I don't feel like I usually get quite as wrapped up on it. Like, stuff like Star Wars I will, stuff like, stuff that I'm really into. But like, But yeah, like I said, I guess just that passion breeds a certain degree of uh, intensity towards things. Um, the Jon going north with the wildlings is just like I mean that was cool. I think that's kind of what he wanted is he wanted out of it, so he got his happy ending. Uh, Arya being like, yeah, I'm out. I'm just gonna go explore and stuff. It's like, well, you really haven't done anything with the whole assassin thing, so why don't you just go do whatever you want anyway? Uh, Sansa being queen of the north, sure, that works. Um, yeah, I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Uh, Overall, I would say it left a pretty unimpressive taste in my mouth as far as the finale goes. It was like, yeah, sure, you did your thing, I guess. Um, you had a lot of flaws along the way in that last season, uh, and I said I think it was one of those ones where it was just like things build up, like it kind of built upon itself to get me to that point where I probably looked at things a little more critically than I would have otherwise. Like, yeah, some very cool, iconic like fantasy scenes, but man, story wise, it definitely fell short. That was something I did want to talk a little bit more about, but I'm probably going to pass on. Is the idea of them basically gutting the intelligence of the three most dangerous and influential people behind the scenes. Um, what happened with Varys's ravens that he sent out? So no one else knows that like Jon is literally the rightful heir because like he wrote them and he wrote a bunch of them. Was Bran out there worrying, like shooting them all down? Be like, no, Raven, drop it. No, okay, good, Raven, and now you can go back to your business. These like random ravens showing up. Like there was a lot of things like that where it's like there was a lot of angles that were led up to be something, and then just nothing panned out with them. Probably because they didn't have enough room to tell the story. Like, oh yeah, like Varys is out there trying to poison the queen and trying to, and basically getting that information out there so like more people know that like, oh, Jon Snow is Aegon Targaryen. He's the rightful heir to the kingdom. Um, and oh, there was one other big point, and this is something I have to look at a little bit closer, but I think I was reading that Robert Baratheon has like a distant relation to the Targaryens, right? That allowed him to basically lay claim to the throne. If Jon or Aegon can't do it because he's basically seen as a criminal for killing the queen, then that makes Gendry Baratheon, a realized Baratheon by the former queen, have the best actual claim to the throne. Um, yeah. But then again, like Tyrion decided to throw out that random thing, like, oh hey, let's have a war every time we want to do a new king, instead of actually doing the lines of succession, which we've done so far. Uh, yeah, we'll leave it on that. That seemed like a good place to end it, where I was just like, okay, sure. I think like Gendry had an actual claim to the throne, but he was like, no, like this kid Bran who doesn't do anything and kind of has this far off stare, like he might be stoned or he might be asleep or catatonic, would make a much better king to rule the kingdom. All right, we'll end it there, guys.